Hey guys, what's up? I miss seeing ya. Hopefully it won't be much longer and we'll be able to get back together again. But as you know, we've canceled all in-person worship services throughout the month of April. So it's going to be at least a few weeks longer before we get to see you. Hey, check out our missionary hallway. Pictures from some of our mission trips we've taken. Pretty cool. Anyhow, where were we? Hey, some of you guys have asked about giving. Now look, if this isn't your church family, your church home, you've stumbled across this, or you're not in a position to give, look, we're not, here begging for money or, anything like that. But if you feel called to give, and this is your church home and you want to give, one of the easiest ways to give is to text that number and how much you want to give. Or you can just mail in a check, whatever you want to do. Enough about that. Guys, we have a worship playlist for you guys to use throughout your weekly worship. So be sure to check that out. We'll be posting that in Facebook this morning as well. And we'll also have a little post for the kids. Why am I walking down? Oh, here's the kids. Look how clean this room is. It's the kids area. One of our kids areas. They haven't been in here to destroy it. They've been destroying your house instead. Anyhow, guys, look forward to seeing you. Today we'll be talking about Thomas. God bless. Have a great week. All right, guys, let's set the stage. So Jesus has been crucified. So we had Good Friday. And then he rose from the dead on Sunday. We had Easter. But now what? So what's Jesus up to now, right? So Jesus has appeared to all of the disciples. They were all holed up in a room, and he shows up there with them. All the disciples, all the 12 disciples, except for Thomas. So the other disciples tell Thomas about the fact that they've seen Jesus alive once again, and that's where we take up the story here in John chapter 20. Verses 24 and following. One of the 12 disciples, Thomas, nicknamed the twin, was not with the others when Jesus came. They told him, "We have seen the Lord." But he replied, "I won't believe it unless I see the nail wounds in his hands, put my fingers into them, and place my hand into the wound in his side. I won't believe it unless," Thomas says. So historically and traditionally, people would now call him Doubting Thomas. And I'm not sure if that's quite fair, because he had one instance where he wanted the same experience that the other disciples had. Gosh, I don't know about you, but I'm just like Thomas. I'm just like him. I have questions. Let's just admit it, I have doubts sometimes. If I would have been in that room, I would have been just like Thomas. Guys, this talk about Jesus being raised from the dead, it's unhealthy. Guys, we know he was crucified. The Romans killed him and buried him. And this talk about him being alive it's not helpful, it's unhealthy. And we need to face reality. The reality of what's happened and how we can move forward. I know we're all scared right now. We're scared because Jesus is dead and gone. We're scared because the Romans might come and kill us too. We don't know. We just need to think about, what's this movement look like going forward? Are we done? Do we just throw in the towel? Jesus is gone. We need to face reality right now and stop with this nonsense about Jesus rising from the dead. I wish it were true, guys, but when I go to funerals, those people are dead and they don't come back to life. So let's move on. Am I right? Sometimes whenever we're actually, as a pastor, when I'm counseling folks or giving them pastoral care, or whenever you as a friend are helping a loved one going through a tough time, sometimes what you're trying to do is if they're not being realistic, you're trying to help them see reality, to move forward. Gosh, I'm just like Thomas. So no, guys, look, Jesus is dead, and we need to accept this. And unless y'all can bring him in here right now, and I can see the nail marks, if I can put my finger in the wound, guys, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. He's being a realist right now. He's got questions. I do too. The other thing that I think's worth pointing out here is that Thomas is not asking for special treatment. Even in a letter to the Corinthians, Paul himself says that Jesus, was seen alive after his crucifixion by many, many people. He actually can, go ask other people about it if you don't believe that he's risen from the dead. They've seen him too. All the disciples have seen Jesus alive. Other people have seen Jesus alive. Thomas is just asking for the same treatment. If he's alive, then why haven't I seen him? You're all delusional. 8 days later, the disciples were together again, and this time Thomas was with them. So he's still there with his guys. He's still together. He hasn't cast them off as a bunch of crazies. The doors were locked, but suddenly, as before, Jesus was standing among them. "Peace be with you," he said. Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here and look at my hands. Put your finger into the wound in my side. Don't be faithless any longer. Believe." "My Lord and my God," Thomas exclaimed. Then Jesus told him, "You believe because you have seen me. Blessed are those who believe without seeing." You know what's interesting here? Jesus didn't storm into the room and say, "Thomas, all your friends who you love have told you that I was alive. Why isn't their testimony enough for you? Do you think they don't care for you? What kind of insecurities do you have? What's wrong with you, Thomas? Thomas, I told you I was coming back, man. Didn't you hear me?" Jesus didn't do that. Thomas asked to put his finger into the side of Jesus. And Jesus shows up and lets him. Jesus answers his prayer. And he said, "Now believe. Now believe." How powerful is that? Gosh, once again, I'm just like Thomas. I have questions. I have doubts. I have insecurities. And let's talk about our questions with God. If you're like me, you got theological questions. I've got so many questions for the Apostle Paul, who wrote a whole lot of the New Testament. I love to sit down over a cup of coffee and talk to that guy for a while. I would love to talk to Jesus about Paul himself. There are so many things that I would like to ask God about theologically, right? I know so many of you have asked questions as well theologically. There's also personal questions we have, right? Why did my friend have to die so young? That doesn't make sense to me, God. God, did you really call me into this ministry that I'm involved in as a Sunday school teacher or on this mission trip or whatever it is that God's called you to? Did you really do that, God? There are personal questions along with the theological questions. God, why did this happen to my family? This tragedy. God, why did I lose my job? Why are they cutting back my hours? God, how could you let this happen? It's going to be tough on the family now. On the flip side of that, there's other questions like, God, why do I have it so well? Why is my family fed and sheltered and there's others in the world that aren't? Why, God? You know, it used to really bother me that I had questions. God knows I do have questions. I have lots of questions. Just throughout life, I tend to ask questions. And it used to bother me that I had questions about faith. It used to bother me that I had theological questions and personal questions. That perhaps because I had questions, I wasn't being faithful. It used to bother me. But you know what? I've just come to a point in my life, in my spiritual life, where my questions don't bother me anymore. I still have questions, And as I have some answered, even it seems like even more, that leads to having more questions, ironically. And I've come to be okay with that. I think I think God's okay with that. If you've ever been around little children, they ask lots of questions, don't they? Now, why is that? Are they doing it just to torment you? Are they doing it to get on your nerves? They're inquisitive. They want to learn. That's why they're asking these questions. And if we have patience and grace with them, we recognize that we should be honored that they are asking us all these questions. They're trying to learn from us. And I know that's hard to hear when you've been asked 1,000 questions within an hour's time, parents out there of young children. But we should be honored that they are come to us with these questions. Because as our kids get older, whenever life starts to hit them in the face, we want them to come to us with questions, don't we? Instead of the world. We want them to come to the church with questions, don't we? Instead of the world. It's my desire here at Branchville United Methodist Church that we are a church, a community of believers who welcome questions. There's a story in the scriptures of Jacob wrestling with God. And together as a church body, as a church family, we wrestle with God together. We wrestle with the scriptures together. We wrestle with life together. There's questions that we all have, and probably if you have the questions, somebody else does too. So let's ask them. Let's stop with the insecurities. Let's just be honest about who we are. And if you're looking for a pastor who has all of the answers, you've got the wrong guy, because I probably have more questions than anybody else here. Questions aren't a sign of a lack of faith. Questions are a sign that you're engaging your faith. You're being cognitive, but you're putting thought into your faith. You're seeking the Lord, and you want to know him, and you have questions. That can be a sign of growth, because you are engaging God. Here's what I would encourage you to do. Reach out to him. I know I spoke about this some last week, but I really want to talk about this again as we look at Thomas. Ask God, I'm struggling with this. I'm not happy about that. God, what are you doing here in this situation? Show me. I'd like to know. I'm confused. I'm scared. I'm whatever it might be. Express that to it. And then listen to it. I think prayer is much more than speaking to God. Shouldn't we be listening to God? Perhaps we should even listen to God more than we speak to him, because he's the one with the knowledge. He's the one with the answers. Do you make room in your life for silence, for a chance to hear God? Are you looking for God in your life? Let's not let our questions keep us away from God, and let's let our questions and our doubts allow us to grow closer to God. Years ago, I had a friend, and that friend, she told me that she didn't believe in Jesus. She didn't put her faith in Jesus because she believes that Jesus was married to Mary Magdalene and had children by her, and that's a big cover-up. So because of that, she's not going to put her faith in Jesus, which I reject that thought. And I'm not going to go into all that, but I don't think that Jesus was married to Mary Magdalene, nor did he have any children. But I kind of turned it around on her, and I said, okay, you know how I feel about that, but for the sake of the argument, you're right. Jesus was married and had children. Are you going to follow him now? How is that stopping you from putting your faith in him? Let's not create these questions to put space between us and God. If we have real questions, let's ask them. Let's allow our questions to bring us closer to God. So here's my challenge for you today. Whatever it is that you wonder about, that you question in your life, that you're angry about, bring it to God. Tell him how you feel. He's not intimidated by you. He wants you to come to him with your questions and your desires and your needs. He asks us to do that with him. Second thing, find a faith community where you can ask those questions in a safe place with other people and all wrestle with that together. Because I can almost guarantee you that if you have a question, you're not the only one. Questions, doubts even, are a sign of a growing faith, not a sign of a lack of faith. Thomas was among the 12 that Jesus called to follow him, his closest 12 that he poured into. And he had questions, and he asked them, and Jesus answered them. Guys, God bless. Have a great week.